He will not see me stopping here, and that person, the owner, he does not know, and he will not come to know that he was standing here and enjoying the scenery. Before he or she can rest for the night, that is one simple thing. But if you take it philosophically, it goes like this: there is much to cover in life before I rest finally. My horse was there with me, and that horse started thinking it was very queer to stop there where there was no sign of any human beings. Hello students, I am Anil, Assistant Professor of English, Vidhyaashram First Grade College, the Temple of Excellence, MYSURU. In this session, we are going to look at a poetry titled Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost, prescribed for the students of BBA second semester. Before we get into the poetry, let us look at the poet. Robert Lee Frost. He was an American poet known for his realistic depictions of rural life and his command of American colloquial speech. Frost frequently wrote about settings from rural life in England in the early 20th century, using them to examine complex social and philosophical themes. When you look at his poetry, you will find these things. Frequently honored during his lifetime, Frost is only poet to receive 4 Pulitzer Prizes for poetry. He became one of the America's rare public literary figures, almost an artistic institution. Frost was awarded the Congressional Gold Medal in the year 1960, and in 1961 he was named Poet Laureate of Vermont. So this is about Robert Lee Frost. He is an American poet, and his poem reflects the rural life and also some philosophical thoughts. And let us see what is there in this poem. The poem has 16 lines, and here it goes. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near. Between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. These are the 16 lines of the poetry. Now let us look at each line and understand what is there in this poem, so philosophical. Now, the scene is like this. The speaker is traveling on his horse, and he stops by a wood which is owned by somebody, and that person is not there. He says, whose woods are these? I think I know. The poet is sure that I know who owns this land, woods, forest. And this speaker, he says, he knows he stands there. His house is in the village though. The owner of the woods, his house is in a village, and he is stopping there and he is enjoying the scene. He will not see me stopping here, and that person, the owner, he does not know, and he will not come to know that he was standing here and enjoying the scenery. To watch his woods fill up with snow. His woods are filling up with snow. It is the month of the cold, that is December. It is getting filled up with snow, and this man is enjoying that view. My little horse must think it queer. Now he is talking about the horse. The speaker is talking about the horse. That horse must be very queer. It thinks that it is queer to stop without a farmhouse near. That means there are no human beings there. But why did this owner of mine stopped here? Between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. There was no farmhouse between the lake, the frozen lake, and the deep, dark forest. There is no human being nearby, and there is no farmhouse. There is no sign of life, human life. But why did this owner stop me here? So this horse must have been thinking all these things. Why did we stop here? He gives his harness bell a shake. He is the horse. The speaker says, he gives his harness bell a shake to ask if there is some mistake. Now, that horse, it shakes its bell and says, was this horse asking me, is there some mistake? The only other sound, the sweep of easy wind and downy flakes. only harness bell was the sound that can be heard. And with that harness bell sound, there is the other sound, that is the sweep of easy wind and downy flakes. There is complete silence. There is no sign of human beings, and it was completely without any sign of human beings. So here the speaker says, in that still silence, only sound he could hear was the harness bell and the easy wind and downy flakes. So there was complete silence. Now the speaker explains, the woods are lovely, dark and deep. The forest is lovely, dark and deep. But I have promises to keep. Now he is reminded of his duties, responsibilities, his desires, everything. A man who is in a social setup, he has all the responsibilities. So those responsibilities came into his mind. But I have promises to keep. These promises to keep indicate his responsibility, his commitments, his desires, etc. And miles to go before I sleep. These two lines, which are repeated in the poetry, they talk about the philosophical thing of this poetry. And miles to go before I sleep. What does this mean? Miles to go before I sleep. This sleep is the final sleep he is talking about. Before I finish my life, I have many things to fulfill in my life. There are promises and miles to go. That means I have not covered the distance. I have not fulfilled all the responsibilities of my life. Before I come to rest, I have many miles to cover. So this is what the poet says in this poetry. Stopping by the woods, that means there was something beautiful in nature. I stopped there to look at. There was stillness, there was silence. I started enjoying it. I knew who owned the forest. And that man was not there to observe me. And that forest was being filled with snow. Everything was fine, everything was happy, quiet. My horse was there with me, and that horse started thinking it was very queer to stop there where there was no sign of any human beings. And the lake was frozen, and there was no farmhouse nearby. The speaker was enjoying the view. He was all alone. He was enjoying his solitude. But suddenly what happened? Suddenly his thoughts reminded him of his responsibilities. His horse made some sound to ask if there is anything wrong. But the poet says nothing. But suddenly his responsibilities awaken him. And he says, I have promises to keep. But before that he says, the woods are lovely, dark and deep. He's enjoying the nature, but suddenly his responsibilities wake him up, and miles to go before I sleep. This is how this poem is very effective. To summarize it, it goes like this. On the surface, this poem is simplicity itself. There is nothing much to discuss. There is nothing much to dig our brains out to understand this poetry. It's very simple in nature. The speaker is stopping by some woods on a snowy evening. The speaker takes in the lovely scenes in near silence, and speaker is tempted to stay longer, but acknowledges the pull of obligations and the considerable distance yet to be traveled before he or she can rest for the night. Before he or she can rest for the night, that is one simple thing. But if you take it philosophically, it goes like this. There is much to cover in life before I rest finally. That is the meaning of this poetry. In this poetry, there are some themes to understand, and those themes are like this: nature and society. They are putting some obligations to each one of us. We want to enjoy the nature, but the society has given us responsibilities to fulfill. Social obligations and personal desire. Even if we wanted to enjoy solitude, be with the nature, there are some social obligations, being a father, mother, husband, wife, a student, a teacher. So these are social obligations which need us to fulfill what they require. Then here is some hesitation and choice. There is no time for hesitation. One has to choose either to stay or to take up the responsibilities. The poet chooses this one, choice. He chooses something that the society wants him to do. So these are the major themes of this poetry, Stopping by the Woods on a Snowy Evening. Robert Frost writes this poem in a very simple way, but this simple poetry has the picture of a rural setup. With this rural setup, he talks about something very philosophical, which makes human beings get up and work for the social obligations. The themes, the summary, you have to remember and you have to understand what is the philosophy of life. The last two lines, miles to go before I sleep, miles to go before I sleep, that is what is driving all of us to achieve our goals in life. With this, we shall meet in the next class. Thank you.